And President Biden, to turn to the agenda that he's got, signed 4 more executive orders today. And this batch, it was all focused on racial equality, which was the centerpiece of his campaign. Listen.
The simple truth is, our soul will be troubled as long as systemic racism is allowed to persist. We can't eliminate it. It's not going to be overnight. We can't eliminate everything, but it's corrosive, it's destructive, and it's costly. It cost every American, not just who felt the sting of racial injustice.
President of the United States there. So today's orders advance fair housing, which has been a source of so much discrimination, and the use of private prisons. That's a big one. Reestablish federal respect for tribal sovereignty, an ancient problem in this country, and taking aim at fighting xenophobia against Asian Americans. So you see the breadth of those orders signed by President Biden. So for more on what they could do for equality in America, let's bring back American history and public policy professor Leah Rigueur, and bring in our ABC News contributor Mike Muse. So, Leah, let me begin with you. What do you think of these orders? Do you think they're going to have a real impact on the lives of Americans, or are they symbolic?
So they're a mixture of both, and I would call them essentially substantive symbolism. There are various parts of the executive orders that will have an immediate impact. The end, for example, of the end for private prisons and support for private prisons. That is a really big deal. I also would say that the investigation of discrimination and the executive order on housing under the Trump administration, essentially trying to undo some of the anti-discrimination measures or the policies that have been undone by the Trump administration under Ben Carson. That's a huge thing as well. I also think the questions around indigenous and tribal sovereignty is a symbolic and genuine step towards kind of establishing this idea of racial equity, broad questions of racial equity. With that said, this is a first step. And there's so much more, I think, that can be done and that people on the ground are expecting to be done. There's only so much that you can do through executive order, but I think this is a first step, both symbolically and substantively, to say, look, now there's room to push for so much more.
And to put it high on his agenda in these early days. And Mike Muse, this private prison order, the carceral state that we have, as I've traveled around the world, I've been in prisons around the world. The prison industrial complex in the United States is just astonishing. 2 million Americans incarcerated in the justice system, a majority of people of color. So how will the DOJ's use of private prisons and what Joe Biden wants to do with it, how do you think it's going to address that issue?
I think it's an incredible step. Our prison system currently right now is federalized and it receives report of the federal government. What is happening is when you start to do that, you begin to untangle campaign finance reform. There's so many judges who are tied to these private corporations that are over sentencing black and brown individuals, and largely disproportionately black men, overly sentenced in order to help with their campaign finance, in order to help keep their prison system populated, to ensure that these prison systems are created to house black and brown men, majority, and women. And so as a result of eliminating the federal contracts, you then begin to disrupt that system, because it's an entire criminal justice ecosystem that comes down to the attorney generals with the over sentencing, who are elected, who receive campaign contributions from these private corporations, all the way to the judge in terms of how they're sentenced, and all the way into how they're held in the prison system. And so it's really important that it's done. For me, I look at this as it's the first week. Ambassador Susan Rice, on his press conference earlier today, she said, I quote, "Give us a couple of days to get to working on more." And so it is extremely important that it is. Racial equity, while President Biden so eloquently described it today, he talked about it from a zero-sum game. He said it's not the zero-sum game. It's not that if I get a job, you lose a job. He talked about all, the rising tides lifts us all up. And I think that is such important that he talked about that, because, Terry, President Obama was the explainer-in-chief when it came to racial equity. And as we got with the former president, we allowed white supremacy and xenophobia to populate in the Oval Office and give coverage through the retweets that he had. It is now the onus and the responsibility of this Biden administration to become the explainer-in-chief again, to talk about racial equity from a broad sense, in a real sense from the Oval Office, to give it levity. But Terry and Eva, what's important is that Susan Rice isn't the only one sent out. But to talk about racial equity now, we need white allies to be engaged in the conversation. I need the white secretaries of state, right? The white secretaries in the cabinet and in leadership positions of Biden administrations to talk about the racial inequities within our agencies to explain to the American public why it's so important.
Such a great point. And we do have a change in tone, and one wonders if that'll, at the top in the Oval Office, one wonders if that will change the culture. Leah, how about that? And how about the order that he specifically addressed to fair housing? We still struggle so much in this country with neighborhoods and our own neighbors. We just ghettoize ourselves, to use the old word. So what do you think about Biden on that issue?
Well, I think, one of the things that we should point out, this larger story about fair housing and equal housing and equitable housing in the United States, is that housing has been a mess. It has been discriminatory. It has been predatory. It has been deeply unequal and unequitable. And it is a microcosm of how we treat people in the United States. We are often underhoused. We also often have not enough housing, whether it be housing vouchers, whether it be housing spaces, whether it be clean and safe and spaces. And so I think part of what happened, particularly in the last 4 years, is that the Trump administration instituted a number of changes that actually took the language of discrimination out of the concept of housing in America. And so what we're seeing here with the Biden administration is an attempt to correct that, but also to investigate what kind of harm was done during that period when we had all of these changes. That's going to be deeply important. And in fact, an auditing of all that has happened under the housing administration, if not the other agencies and departments, is going to be necessary in order to have these first steps towards racial equity in America.
And Mike, I want to ask about President Biden's relationship with the black community in America. One of the reasons I think he defeated President Trump was this engagement in the democracy by so many black voters in so many places, led in Georgia and in some ways across the country by Stacey Abrams. How much is Joe Biden earning the trust, keeping the trust of so many voters who put him in that office?
Terry, that's such a great question that you asked. That's such important because for the first time, black voters are seeing that their vote does count and action can happen when black voters come out in droves and change can occur. But now black voters are now savvy to begin to hold these presidents accountable now. It's no longer we're just going to get you into office. We want you to work on our behalf. Biden said in one of his speeches, his victory speeches, he said, I owe my president to the African-American community, I believe was his quote. And he said, I won't forget that and I won't let you down. I think this action today was very important when it comes to that, but we have to begin to lean into to go from symbolism and symbolic signings, as you mentioned earlier with the guests, to actual action and specificness. Particularly, I'm looking at the Small Business Administration. We need more specific conversations around access to federal contracts for black Americans. And not only that, the expanding of the 8A program. And not only that, working with private banks to ensure that blacks have access to capital in order to fulfill those type of contracts. More specific language when it comes to the Department of Education to ensure black and brown boys and girls can read proficiently by the end of 3rd grade in order to advance to 4th grade so they get off of the school to prison pipeline. So yes, the symbolism is important. The executive actions matter, and particularly in the first week to show his commitment to the black and brown community. But now we need more specific language. I don't think, Terry and Eva, we need more commissions and research studies anymore. I think we're commissioned out now. I think now what the black community wants is action specifically, and we don't want broad language. We don't want a review for 2 years. We don't want a research study for 8 years. Being black in America, we've lived that experience, and we know what it's like, and so now we need specific language and specific wording.
Hard work ahead. Work really for all of us. Leah, Wright, Rigueur, and Mike Muse. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.